Welcome back, everyone. The ceasefire deal has been announced and in effect as of Sunday. How many of us actually understand the deal, and how many of us are hopeful that this deal will put an end to the war? Well, today we're going to be looking at what Dr. Norman Finkelstein has to say about it. He raises some very important points that many of us have probably overlooked. We're going to run through these points one by one. The first point Dr. Norman Finkelstein raises was, why now? Why was it significant for this deal to happen now and not back in the spring when it was originally announced? This is very interesting. Check this out.
Number one, there is a interesting analogy to what just happened with the ceasefire. I suspect nobody among your viewers and listeners will know that on January 17th, that is today, January 17th, 2009, Operation Cast Lead ended. That was the Israeli assault on Gaza. At the time, it seemed like a very large assault. It lasted from December 26th till January 17th, what Amnesty International called 22 days of death and destruction. And you know why it ended? It's an interesting story of great relevance with the recent developments in Gaza. It ended because President Obama was going to be inaugurated president. And he didn't want this sideshow in Gaza to distract attention from his coronation. And so he told Israel, end the attack, and it did. Very obediently, it did as the master ordered them being Israel, to do. In the current situation, as you will recall, about a month ago, President Trump announced that if the hostages were not released at the time of his inauguration, there would be all hell to pay. Now, President Trump, he didn't want to begin his presidency by having to unleash a savage assault on Gaza. First of all, because the people of Gaza had already paid hell.
So what Dr. Norman Finkelstein here is saying, the ceasefire was announced now because he didn't want any of the attention to be deferred anywhere else or people to be distracted with anything else. The biggest thing in the news right now to most people is the inauguration that's happening in the US with the new people being sworn into office. Only Dr. Norman Finkelstein could say this so confidently and backing this up with evidence of it happening using an almost identical example. Let's hear the rest of the first point before moving on to the second.
In the past 15 months. So there wasn't much more that he could do. And secondly, because he didn't want to begin his presidency on such a merciless, heartless note. And so he read the Riot Act, or his emissary read the Riot Act to Netanyahu, as in signed the agreement which apparently doesn't differ in any significant way from the agreement that was agreed to in May of this past year. And it ended. The lesson to be learned from there is when an American president says stop, it stops.
Very interesting to hear that point of view, and I think it's crucial for people to understand that. Now, in the next point, Dr. Norman Finkelstein discusses the lifting of the blockade and the rebuilding of Gaza. He gives multiple examples and touches on something very, very important, quoting presidents of the past saying the day after the ceasefire, no one will remember what was written in that agreement. No one will remember what was written in that agreement. Let's hear the champ explain it in a bit more detail.
Now, having said that, as you know, there are two components to the ceasefire. One is the mutual hostage exchange, the thousands of hostages that are being held by Israel versus the 100 or less hostages currently being held by Hamas. There is the hostage exchange, but there is also a second aspect. That is the promise of admitting humanitarian aid on a high level, they say 600 trucks per day, allowing for the reconstruction of Gaza and all the rest. For those who don't know the history, lifting the blockade of Gaza, allowing for the reconstruction of Gaza and all the rest, it was promised after Operation Cast Lead. It was promised after Israel assaulted the humanitarian flotilla, Mavi Marmara. It was promised after Operation Pillar of Defense in 2012. It was promised after Operation Protective Edge in 2014, and nothing came of it. As at the time of Operation Pillar of Defense, the defense minister was Ehud Barak, and he said they were signing an agreement to end the operation, these high-tech killing sprees. They were signing an agreement, and it included a ceasefire plus the lifting or the easing of the blockade. And at the time, Barak told the other Israeli officials who were debating whether to sign the ceasefire plus the end of the blockade or the easing of the blockade, he said, quote, "A day after the ceasefire, no one will remember what is written in that agreement." I think that's absolutely correct. I think after the ceasefire and the exchange, the mutual exchange of hostages between Israel and Hamas, all the promises about admitting humanitarian aid and allowing for the reconstruction in Gaza, all of that will vanish like snow in a spring sunshine. It won't happen.
It won't happen. The words of Dr. Norman Finkelstein. If there's any man I trust on this particular subject, it's him. He doesn't feel confident that the ceasefire deal will be successful, and nor do I. The countless number of times this has happened in the past and it's failed is evident of that. I hope for my Palestinian brothers and sisters that it does, but I just can't see it happening because of all the wrong involvements. We pray for the people of Palestine and all the people around the world going through difficult times. We're going to continue to raise awareness of such atrocities to the best of our abilities. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Support me by liking and subscribing, and I'll see you in my next video. Peace out.